Yeah.
I didn't know if this was like urgent already.
If we need it, we got it.
Yeah.
Well, that one right there, you can make that go on the desktop.
I can. That's not a bad idea.
You
Maybe-
travel.
I do. Maybe you should have it, Bobby. How good idea.
No, I've just been married a long time.
I had them all given to me by the woman I married. Yeah, my ideas. I have no original thought on that.
Welcome to the June 20th, 2019 work session of the Abingdon Town Council. I will thank you all for attending. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Quetch? Here. Mr. Webb?
Here.
Ms. Patterson? Here. And Mayor Craig?
Here. We have nobody signed up for public comments, so we won't have public comments. The first item on the agenda, under reports from the town manager, is a presentation regarding objective criteria pertaining to yearly non-departmental budget. Mr. Henderson is here.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor Craig, for the invite, and council members for putting me on the agenda to have just a little dialogue with y'all today. My name is Ryan Henderson, and I'm a resident here of Abingdon. And I was initially involved in this topic of conversation after watching I believe it was the March 26th budget meeting. And initially I was dismayed by the funding cut. I'm speaking on behalf as a member of the Virginia Highlands Festival, and I was dismayed by the funding cut to the festival, which amounted to $10,000, which was approximately 1/3 of its funding through the town. Now, it wasn't the cut itself that was disappointing, because it's reasonable to assume and to expect that sometimes difficult budget decisions have to be made. I think what was most disappointing was the rationale behind that specific cut. The Virginia Highlands Festival was able to save a considerable amount of money, and because of that money, that savings, we were able to reinvest that $12,000 that we saved into other programming that will hopefully that has already brought folks back to our town, so that we can kind of latch onto the tourism aspect. But almost more importantly, we've been able to pass those savings along to festival goers, as almost all of our events are going to be free, especially for youth, but also for adults for this coming festival. So the perception from that cut was that the festival was being almost like punished for being fiscally conscious. While the goal may have been to maybe share the burden among organizations because of the cuts, the process doesn't necessarily inspire fiscal responsibility, because there doesn't seem to be incentive for an organization to save money if money and funding is just going to be cut because of that. So that was my initial reason why I got involved in this. But then I watched the rest of the video, and it became clear that there didn't seem to be a very specific process by which funding was either allotted or cut from program to program. And that's why all of you should have a little tan piece of paper, one sheet of piece of paper. It's got a non-departmental funding process outline. So this is just an outline that I just kind of want to go over a little bit, and I want to make sure I'm not going to spend too much time, because I want to make sure that we have time for y'all to ask any questions, clarifying questions about this specific outline. So I'll kind of read a little bit of it and go through it, and then I'll open it up to questions. Because the whole point of this is hopefully that this can be a guide for the council to adopt a clear and specific official process when considering funding for non-departmental organizations. So there are three real major points of consideration that we'll get into further detail. And those points are how the specific organization applying for funding fits into the town's vision, how maybe having an application process with a clearly defined rubric, and then a review process of those applications that can include a non-departmental budget commission that would make final funding recommendations to the town council. So the town council always has the discretion to make the final decisions. So let's take these three ideas and just kind of flesh them out just a little bit here. So the vision aspect is the town, I'm sure the town already has a clear vision of what kind of community we want to create together, right? So how this vision can inform what kind of organizations merit public funding based on how they fit into this vision. And the town can invest in organizations based on that. So then there's an application process, right? So the application process, the town can create a vision, or to basically feed into that vision, the town can seek to know the applicants. A weighted scoring system could be created, and topics or questions that could be asked could include, what is the mission of this organization, and how is that mission executed? Right? How does an organization plan to use any public funding? And how is success measured? And does an organization measure up to its own standards? The financial outlook should be important. Is the organization a good steward of the money it already has, or is it persistently in debt? And if the organization is persistently in debt, does the town stop funding, or does the town believe the organization's mission is that vital to the town that it uses its discretion again to continue funding? So the council always has that discretion. Does the community value the work of the organization, which could be shown in letters of support, testimonials, etc. And finally, in order to validate an organization's quality of operations, maybe samples of work are necessary. That could include photos, newspaper articles, video links, things like that. Now those applications are brought in. There should be a review process. So the panel can review, this process can kind of review an organization's application, score it, make recommendations. And what we're thinking is having a non-departmental commission that could consist of town council members, but y'all are busy and you're not paid full-time, so it could be town staff, or it could be qualified citizens that make up this commission. The commission could consist of 5 to 7 people. They could meet maybe only twice a year. One of those meetings could be to make those recommendations regarding the budget. One member of that commission could be a representative to the town to then give the recommendations that you would then vote upon. The commission could consist of representatives from various fields of organizations that are in the non-departmental zone. That include healthcare, sports and rec, economic development, arts. So that's kind of like the gist of this outline process. And I did on Mayor Craig's recommendation to speak with Mr. Chuck Banner. And he was very helpful. It was a great, fruitful conversation. And he mentioned that if this process was adopted by the fall, it could be utilized for the next budget year. And I think that's our main goal, is to have the council take up and adopt an official process by which funding could be allotted in an objective and fair way for non-departmental organizations. Now, that being said, I spoke really fast and I'm a little nervous. Feel free, you may have some questions. I'd love to have a conversation here in the time that we have available to maybe clear up any questions you might have, or maybe spark some ideas from this.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming today on behalf of the Virginia Highlands Festival, and appreciate your input. I do want to tell you that we do have an application that we look at when we have all the non-departmentals fill that out, and they show us what they're going to be spending money on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good, unless it's another application that you're speaking of. We've already got one of those.
Sure.
Mr. Webb and Ms. Quetch, I think it was last couple months ago, they are on the finance committee now. They were organizing that. And I think Mr. Banner might be a part of that, and maybe someone else. The town manager, thank you so much. So they are already in the process of doing that. And so I think that's good. I did recommend a citizen budget committee, and that might be helpful with citizen input. And I wanted to say, I'm sorry that you feel like you're being punished, because that was definitely not anything that we did. We weren't doing that at all. I'm really proud of Becky Caldwell for stepping up to the plate to replenish some of the money. You said you saved money. I do want to ask, did you save prior year, or is it this year you saved money? How did you save the money?
I believe, and of course Becky would speak probably way more articulately to that point, but I believe, if I'm correct, it was this coming into this year, I believe, although I could be speaking nonsense, because we were able to put that into another little mini plein air festival, which seemed to be a very big success to bring people and local artists into the area.
And being said, the plein air festival, I wanted to compliment her on that. She stepped up to the plate. She's like, okay, we got the budget cut, let me do something about it. So she was able to do that. Plus, she's also doing the dinners, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And
yep.
so I was
Mhm.
very proud of her for doing that. That was exceptional. The other thing I wanted to just touch on real quickly and let the other council members speak as well.
Great.
Is this process has been done for years. And Wayne and I, we've been on this team now for about 3 years, so we didn't know it was broken, but we have had to, come to grips that we're not a financial institution anymore, and we're trying to help what we can and how we can help. So just bear that in mind, that we're not getting the funding like we used to. It's drastically cut. You all are non-departmentals, and it's even cut the 501(c)(3)s, like Meals on Wheels had a cut as well, not from us, but other agencies had to cut them. I think the Washington County Chamber or Board of Supervisors, so
Yeah.
you guys are not alone, okay?
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate that because, I mean, and just to reiterate, like, it's reasonable, like, people should expect, especially, nonprofits and non-departmental organizations, like, the budget is not, your funding is not guaranteed. That is not, it's not just like, it's a privilege, not a right. We're not rated to that. And I think the larger aspect is like having a process where, okay, well, we got cut, but we're doing the best we can as an organization. And really, I think that kind of building some specific process will not only be good because it will seem objective and fair, but it will also, I think, strengthen the organizations that are applying here in our town, in our community, which will just be a boom for everybody here in our community.
Where do we stand with the finance committee? Is that established? Are we doing that?
Yeah,
Then can we refer this to them to,
I think so. I
Yeah,
think Cindy made that point. I think it's,
in that case, I would make a motion that we refer this to the finance committee and let them grapple with it.
I second that.
hey, the motion's been made and seconded to move forward this.
Do we need to take action on this, or is this something we can just kind of, I'm just curious.
Well,
We
have
don't
some-
necessarily need to.
I mean-
We can do it without a formal process, so if all 5 of us by consensus.
I mean, it's fine if y'all want to, I'm just
With
curious.
your permission, I'll ask Mr. Morani to,
Sure.
so we can do it that way.
Is that good?
Okay, all right. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
About the vision. I'm kind of interested in that with community vision.
Mhm.
We're in the process of updating our comprehensive plan.
Correct.
And our comprehensive plan has a vision statement that will come before us by next fall, I think. Jason's not here, so.
Should be.
Could you give us one example of how a vision statement, so we?
Well, yeah, and it's tricky, right? Because like I would assume you wouldn't want one person to like say this is the vision of our community. And I think having that collaborative conversation and hashing out like how do we, especially it seems like everything is coming together with this new strategic planning. It might be a perfect kind of opportunity to investigate and to explore what kind of vision do we want to set moving forward for our town. I don't know necessarily what that would look like, but I'm definitely interested in having that conversation collaboratively with other folks.
I didn't, what I'm grappling with, and you may not be able to help me.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out how I might use that vision statement to influence me. Can you give me an example of how that?
Yeah, okay, so here's an example, like, okay, so I also, so my day job, I get to work for an education program called Project Real through the Barter Theater. So I work at Abington High School, Patrick Henry High School, various schools in the area. And the vision of the theater might say one of the biggest things is like,
I got it.
yeah.
I got it.
And then
All right.
any decision we make has to be
I've got
based on
it.
that.
I just wanted to, I never have thought about applying a vision statement to non-departmental funding, but I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, my pleasure.
All right, Council, any other questions?
Well, I'd also like to thank you for the correspondence. I know you emailed me a couple of times, and I appreciate you coming out and preparing this for us. I think that is, I absolutely agree with you having an objective sort of process that has tangible sort of goals and just a little easier way for us to say, well, X, Y, and Z may be more valuable than not having X, Y, and Z, or tangible assets that a group can provide, but having accountability, you know, for these.
Accountability is a big
Yeah,
thing.
That's
Yeah.
huge. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I applaud you and I appreciate you coming to us with this, and that's certainly the first step in the process.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you again, Mr. Henderson.
Yeah,
One more question, please, I'm
Please.
sorry.
no, that's fine.
Did you reach out to just a couple of members or all council members? Or
I
I didn't
believe-
get an email, just so you know.
Oh, okay, well, I thought that I had emailed every, all members, so, it must have gotten lost or something, but that was my point, was to make sure that everybody received correspondence, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything and so I can respond as well.
Right, right.
I certainly don't want to do that.
And thank you for bringing that up.
My memory is the same as yours. I thought it went to all the council.
I don't remember getting it, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm sure you all get many
Well,
correspondence.
sometimes, to tell you the truth, I don't think we get our emails.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
One more point I would like to tell you, this might be inspiring. I went to the assembly this year, I think it was in February, with the leadership program. I was very impressed that this one Boy Scout sold $80,000 worth of popcorn. So just so you know, fundraising's out there, and you know, I know that might be a little, but popcorn's pretty good. There's other things that you can do to sell things and
Oh,
help, but I'm so
definitely.
proud of Becky stepping up and doing that. Kudos to her.
Yeah, thank you, she's doing some good stuff out
She
there.
really is.
Is there maybe a person I could follow up with, maybe someone on the finance committee, just to like check in with two of you? Okay, awesome. Is that okay if I like check in and just follow up with this?
Any of us will be glad to, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And should you all have any questions or, you know, feel free to reach out now that you have my information. Feel free to reach out at any point. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Okay,
We
just
would
again,
also welcome your input on our vision statement. It should be floating around somewhere.
Oh, that'd be
Jason-
awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
Jason Boswell will have it. I've got it. If you need me, I can pass it on to you. But there's one working its way around, and it's part of the ongoing comprehensive plan
I
process.
think Ryan actually attended our last planning.
Yeah, I had to jet
Oh, yeah,
out.
okay.
I had to jet out
For
halfway through, but
comprehensive plans.
but I'm interested in continuing, you know, and being more a part of that process whenever. Yeah. That,
Could you write your number down on here and your name, and also,
Yeah.
or, I mean, I've got your name here, but phone number, email?
I can. Would a card be helpful?
A
I can,
card would be
yeah,
great.
Okay. I'll pass each one of those out to y'all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
okay, the next item is discussion regarding application for special use permit pursuant to section 7.3 of the Abingdon Town zoning code. Proposed construction of automobile repair, reconditioning, and body shop currently zoned M1 Industrial District located at 550 Lowry Drive. Let's see, this, Jason's listed here. Tyler, you're gonna handle this. Oh, you're
Yeah,
already
Jason
up
is
there.
out of town. Thank you, Mr. Craig and council. I'm handling this for Jason today. So we had, at the May 27th Planning Commission, a application for special use for a truck repair garage. It's a metal building in the M1 district off Lowry Drive between Abingdon Millworks and MXI. And it is a 4,800 square foot metal building with 3 bays in the rear. And it is supposed to be for a local trucking company, a place for them to house up to 10 vehicles, but the also perform repair work on the trucks as well, and that all the repair work will be done inside the facility. They may store some of the trucks outside. All appropriate screening, landscaping, and everything as opposed would be according to the site plan regulations. It was discussed that the traffic generated from this business would not be significant. They anticipate a few tractor trailers during the week, 3 to 4 maybe on the weekend. Again, all the mechanical work would be performed on the inside of the building, and that they have the ability to house 10 tractor trailers on the property. And the vote was unanimous to approved special use permit for this, this use. Is there any questions?
Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I will say, just for the record, so you guys know, I was approached by one neighboring citizen that had some concerns about traffic. And apparently they've been there for quite some time, kind of diagonal across the road. And I just felt like, I don't have a problem with what's being proposed. I just felt like everybody needs to know that they did bring that up.
A representative of that group spoke at the planning commission, and
Good deal.
as best I could tell from the conversation, all of his questions were answered.
Okay.
As Tyler mentioned, I think there was
Yes.
an issue about whether you could see it,
Yeah.
and as Tyler said, the blocking of the trees and sort of the elevation, you can't really see it from where it was.
Well, I drove through, and I agree with you. I don't particularly see that it's an issue. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff already there that kind of look the same-ish. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that that was said, you know,
Right, I
in
know
fairness
that
to everybody.
Mr. Bradley remembers any more specifics than that, but it talked about traffic and view and how many trucks were gonna be there at a time and that sort of thing. And it sounded like his questions were resolved at the
These
meeting.
got pretty well ironed out at the planning commission meeting.
Excellent.
And the hours of operation will be well within the noise ordinance and the code, so.
As Tyler has pointed out, it was
Was
unanimously
unanimous.
recommended by the planning commission. So I would go ahead and move, we approve the special use permit. That's in order.
This is just discussion. It's on the, it will be on the agenda for July 1st.
And it will
That's
also
been
be a
advertised.
public hearing.
Public hearing's already been advertised?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This
In
is just,
that case, I'll just rescind my motion. And shut my mouth.
Well, I like your style, I like to move on.
I think we ought to get these things done.
I agree with you. Okay, Tyler, thank you. You're welcome. So this will be on the July agenda?
yes, sir.
Okay. Discussion, item number 3, discussion regarding reappointment of an additional 1-year term for Mayor Craig to the District 3 Governmental Cooperative and alternate appointment and whatever. I'll be happy to, I'll be happy to,
I move we approve of whatever.
to stay on there. If anybody else wants to drive to Marion once every 2 months and attend that meeting, they're welcome to do it. I would welcome the help.
I think they were asking for an alternative in case you should not be able to come to a meeting from their letter, just as a backup.
Well, let's let the town manager do that.
Okay.
All right. Or maybe Matt Bowen could do it.
I think it has to be an elected official.
I don't think it does.
That was quick, yeah.
Okay. Kim, I think that'll be all right.
Okay.
They usually have a quorum, and there's nothing exciting happening on that commission. They pretty much take care of, they do a good job, staff pretty much takes care of the business. Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding Friends of Abingdon Incorporated appeal of the certificate of appropriateness approved by the planning commission on May 20, 2019 for Tom Cosby Crowbar LLC regarding power sudden service facility. Never heard it called that, but I like sudden service, so. Ken, you gonna tell us all about that?
Yes, sir. I believe that all the council has gotten copies of it. If you have not, then I'm happy to provide it to you. But the town received a copy of an appeal of the certificate of appropriateness from the Friends of Abingdon Incorporated. The town received it June 19th. As we've discussed in the past, this is one of the out parcels of the Meadows development. The appeal is based on 3 provisions, I believe. Primarily all around the entrance overlay, entrance corridor overlay district requirements. There are some references to a special use permit and also to the restrictive covenant document that we've discussed before between Marathon and the town. Procedurally, I'm not going to give you guys legal advice on camera today, but I wanted to sort of lay out where we are. Planning Commission made a decision. They approved the certificate of appropriateness. Ms. Patterson was at the meeting, and Mr. Bradley obviously on Planning Commission, so you know sort of what happened. There was an extensive discussion at the Planning Commission level about the design. The issue seems to be primarily in the appeal of the color of the building itself. There are some criteria in the restrictive covenants that talk about the design materials. There's a general reference in the entrance overlay district to color, as we've discussed in the past about the entrance corridor ordinances. It isn't very specific. The conversation at the Planning Commission level, Mr. Bradley can chime in too because he participated in it, but was in the current status of the overlay district. There are lots of things that have been approved with various color schemes and various materials and that sort of thing. And Mr. Austin, who's the chair of the Planning Commission, had an extensive conversation that he referred to the teal as swimming pool blue and was adamantly opposed to that color. And there was a discussion from other members about what had been approved in the past and what the ordinance said in a general way. And I think the consensus was, even assuming that the overlay district rules applied, that this color in the design scheme was approved. The three bases for the appeal are that the color is not coordinated with the other buildings in the development. That seems to be saying that coordinated means the same. I don't think that's exactly what the ordinance requires. That trademark buildings shall be modified to meet the design standards, and that the special use permit and the declaration of restrictive covenants have conditions in them that should be applied. So the procedure will be that the council will hear this as an appellate body, essentially. There'll be a standard of review, essentially, to look at the Planning Commission's decision, decide whether it was an arbitrary and capricious determination or not, and then make a determination. I think that's all I'm going to say.
Well, tell us whether we should have a public hearing, or whether we're required to have.
I don't think it's technically required. There's a specific ordinance that allows an appeal. How this fits in is an application in the overlay district requires a certificate of appropriateness from the Planning Commission. Under 18.9-9, there's an appeal process of that by the applicant or party aggrieved by that decision. That specific ordinance doesn't provide any specifics about the procedure or that sort of thing, or whether a public hearing is required. If, for instance, something was appealed from Planning Commission to the Board of Zoning Appeals, then that's got a very specific set of guidelines of notice and that sort of thing. This particular ordinance does not require that. We can certainly give notice to the applicant. We can certainly give notice, and we can wait and do what we would ordinarily do for a public hearing. I don't think that it is technically required, though.
I didn't hear that, Tim.
I do not think that a public hearing is technically required under this particular ordinance.
Okay. Council, what, do you want to have a public hearing, or?
I think you can just look on Facebook. It's public hearing all over the Facebook today.
Just read Facebook?
Yeah, I know, right? People talking about burning trash cans if we don't get pals, and angry mobs. And seriously, have you read it?
I have.
Yeah, see?
Well, I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I feel we should hear the appeal as soon as possible, because we've been accused of not being business friendly, and I think we should give guidance as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think we need to move as soon as we can.
You want to put it on the July agenda then?
I think so.
Al?
Yes.
I do too.
You agree with that, Sandy?
Yeah.
And we could have Ms. Kingsley advertise it in the newspaper just in addition to the ordinary meeting, not technically as a public hearing, but just to give additional
I
notice.
think that might be a good idea.
I'm okay with that.
I just wanted to say something too, without looking like I'm opposing it, because I'm not opposing PALs per se. But I did read the covenants, and in there it said something about the brick being natural clay,
Correct.
and that no more than 10% could be painted.
That's not what that means.
That's not what it means.
Natural, and that seems to be the position that the Friends of Abingdon are taking. And I've spoken to Mr. Boswell about this, and this exists in other localities. But natural brick means as opposed to synthetic brick. It doesn't refer to whether it's painted or not. And Powell's had agreed, and this came out in Planning Commission too, that the entire building will be brick.
Well, I think we don't need a discussion of the merits of the appeal until the appeal is presented to us.
That's right.
So we'll have another discussion later.
We'll have a discussion at the next meeting. Okay, discussion regarding permanent status of infrastructure committee and policy regarding appointment to said committee. Matt Bowick.
Hello, Mayor Craig. Hello, council. Nice to see you this afternoon. Seems like a good day to have things that are being referred to other committees. They can report back to the town council. But that's what I'm here today to talk about, is the possibility of establishing an infrastructure advisory committee. We've had an infrastructure committee that's been meeting as an informal group for over a year now, and I think it's done some beneficial work for the council and for the town. One good example was that committee reviewed the one-way options here at College and Church Street and made a recommendation to the town council for their official adoption for, you made an official action on that. So that was just one example of some of the things that this committee's been working on. I believe that the town will be well served to make this an official committee going forward, very similar to something along the lines of the Recreational Advisory Committee or the Tourism Advisory Committee. So then this committee can make recommendations to the council on any type of infrastructure projects that come up. Specifically, I think that they'll do one large benefit that you'll see moving forward is they'll help you develop your capital improvement projects plan. This committee can put all this information together for a 5 or 6 year plan, and they'll hash out a lot of the details and present to the council as a recommendation. Then you can have something to look at and start making comments on instead of having to start from scratch and try and develop it yourself. I was wanting to have a draft bylaws for the council tonight, or today, but was not able to get that prepared for you for your work session today. But I'll be able to sit down with Cam and go over potential bylaws. And I'd like to have that on the next 1 or 2 council meetings coming forward for you to adopt. Right now there's a council member, Mayor Craig, and there are 3 citizens on that committee. Same as the other committees, it would have to be an official action to appoint someone to that committee. I would recommend that the 3 citizens that are on there remain, and we add probably a 4th to make it a committee of 5. That'd be a council member and 4 citizens. So that'd be my recommendation going forward from that.
The infrastructure committee has also given input on the comprehensive plan. We have a sewer program going on. All of these things need to be monitored and taken care of. So I think, my personal opinion is that I think we should establish it as a permanent committee going forward, because I think it serves a very good purpose, and not just what's been done, but in the future. That's my suggestion.
And I want to say thank you to Mayor Craig, because you were instrumental in starting this committee, and you've worked really hard, and as well as the committee members, and thank you so much for that. And I also agree with you. I think we should have an official committee.
Procedurally, we would draft an ordinance and do something similar to what we did.
You think that would be ready? Al, do you want to do this, or are you in agreement, or?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, you think you could have what we need ready for the August meeting?
Yes, sir.
August meeting sounds excellent.
Do you think August meeting?
August meeting sounds excellent.
Okay.
Good timing.
Let's put it on the agenda for the August meeting.
July would be pushing.
Thank you very much, man.
You're welcome. Mayor Craig made a great point, though. We're in the middle of a sewer study right now, and that's going to come back with recommendations from our consultant. So, for example, this would come before the infrastructure committee. They could take those recommendations, modify them as needed or as they saw fit, and then present that recommendation to council also. So you'd have the consultant, you'd have already another citizen advisory group looking at it, and then come back to you with, you know, their recommendation. So I see a lot of benefit moving forward. So thank you for your time. And Cam, we'll be working together soon to get that drafted. Just a quick question. You said it's an ordinance, but is that where they adopt the bylaws? I mean, how, well, we'll see how it works.
The ordinance would establish the committee, and the bylaws probably can be adopted by the committee themselves. I'm not sure the council needs to do that, but
Even
we
better.
can talk about it.
Even better. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, number 6, is discussion regarding retention of applications to various boards and commissions. Kim?
Yes, Mr. Morani asked me to go ahead and present this to you all, so you could be thinking about it. He has spoken with several of his colleagues, and during one of my recent conferences at the clerk's conference, they are handling their boards and commission applications much different than we are doing. They're only holding the current applications for a year, simply because most of the reason being, people move in and out. Their lives change, sometimes they're willing to serve, sometimes things change and they change their mind and things. So we are proposing that we do our boards and commission applications for a year at a time. We've also suggested that we add at the bottom on the Planning Commission, the Historic Preservation Board, and if you all can think of additional boards, a waiver that says must be willing to become certified and/or attend training or seminar related to the boards and commissions. So they are aware of this prior to making applications. So we just wanted you all to think about it and maybe further discussion at July work session or,
Okay,
so those are some of the things that we're.
okay. We probably want to think about, I anticipate approval of the infrastructure committee, so you may want, if you've got an application, you may want to include that on there.
Okay.
That's great.
And they'll get a notice that, the notice, did I hear you say that it will have on the application that it expires in a year?
Yes.
Okay.
And one more thing that we've talked about in the past is having the matrix available with all applications to the town council. So I'd like to see that in like a share file, so that we can pull up everybody's application for a year's time, and then we'll just take those out, and when we get new ones in, we'll put new ones in.
Okay, but they won't be a running. Like if we start this in 2020, the way we propose it, you'll get all the applications we received during that year. Those will be put aside, and if they want to serve in 2021, they will make a new application. So that way, we're not constantly calling people and saying, are you willing to serve, and things of that sort.
Right, I think that's a simpler process.
Okay, another item, Kim, you're popular today, discussion regarding donations made to the Sinking Spring Cemetery.
Yes, and I wanted to update the committee. We've received, I believe, approximately $275 in donations for, I'm sorry, her name just escaped me. I'm so sorry. It was a donation for a family member that had passed. And we have appointed that in our historic properties line item, but I wanted to make sure that the Sinking Spring Cemetery knew about that. So it's approximately $275, I believe, in donations. So we will bring that up with the committee, and Mr. Morini knows that we need to schedule one soon. So.
Okay. I'm on the Sinking Spring Cemetery Committee. They meet once about every 10 years.
Should have drawn some interest on
Excuse me.
Whenever you hear reports of ghosts over there or something like that.
We had one in January.
I suggest Tanya's not going to be here at 3:30, and she's in the closed session. Al, do you want to take a break, and or do you want to go ahead and do the closed session?
Can we just soldier on?
What?
Can we just soldier on?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Can we do the, is she
Yeah,
both of
we
them?
can do it. We need we can do it in reverse order. Or
Reverse order? Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, okay, you're only gonna be able to do the one motion since we're not pulling them together, so the top one.
All right, so, now what, I'm just doing this one?
Yes, this one will come later, yes,
Okay.
when she sees.
So just read the whole thing then off the.
Yes.
All right. I would like to make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended, for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, namely Berry versus Town of Abington et al.
We're going to take them both up in the same meeting. We need to.
You can wait for Tony to come
We're
back.
gonna wait for Tanya on the first one.
We have to go back into open session. Do we have, can we do them both in this now and just have Tanya join us?
3:30.
Yeah.
Do you think it's gonna take that long for the first?
No, but
Okay,
I
sure.
can't make her be faster, can
All right, you want me to X that then and do both of them at the same
No, we
time?
can do them one at a time. if that's
It's-
what you
it's
all
totally
want.
up to you
We have
guys.
to go back in open session, that's all. All right.
We'll do both.
I'm
We've done
really
that
confused
dance before.
everything. Is there a second to Derek's motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Jim, call the roll, please.
Certainly, Mr. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
And Mayor Craig.
Did somebody second? Somebody second.
Donna.
Is there a motion to go
Not
back
yet.
in?
I'm sorry, I'm waiting on Floyd to tell me we're live.
He's asleep or something.
He ran upstairs really quickly.
Ready now here.
Move, we go back into regular session.
I second that.
Motion by Mr. Bradley, second by Ms. Patterson, that we go back into open session. Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye. Okay,
Certification.
So this one.
Yes.
I move that the town council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
Mr. Bradley?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
Mr. Webb?
I so certify.
Ms. Patterson?
I so certify.
And Mayor Craig?
I said so. Okay, Dirk, you got another motion to make?
Sure do. I'd make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711839 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended for the discussion or consideration of information subject to the exclusion in subdivision 3 of section 2.2-3705.6 related to economic development.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Webb, second by Ms. Quitch to go into closed session. Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye.
He'll probably show up at the July 1st meeting. He was happy that it was at night. He said, I can't come much during the day because I work. I said,
If he really wants an education, tell him to come see me.
Is there a motion, we go back in,
So moved.
motion by Ms. Patterson, go back in?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bradley. Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig?
Aye. Kim, then don't forget to do the certification.
All right. I move that the town council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in the closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as cited in that motion.
Mr. Bradley?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
Mr. Webb?
I so certify.
Ms.
I
Patterson?
so certify.
And Mayor Craig?
I so certify. That's all that's on the agenda. Has anybody got anything else?
Except for the council.
It's not, the council report's not on anything. Is it? Oh, well, I skipped it up there, didn't I? Well, why did you let me do that?
I don't know.
All right, you make your report.
Okay.
We'll be done.
I'd just like a copy of, I don't have anything to report right now, I'll report later, but may I have a copy of the closed session handout that Mr. Webb's got? And just gotta have a copy of it.
About this?
Yeah.
Oh, just motions, that's all.
That's all I need.
And not right now. No, it's fine, I've got a copy.
Okay. That's all I need right now.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Just in time.
You make it just in time? Yeah.
Very good. I'll just take it.